Welcome everyone to this webinar brought to you by Decide Solutions. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about SOLIDWORKS Visualize, more specifically SOLIDWORKS Visualize Standard. And this is also part of a kind of a series that we're doing that we're calling Lesser Known Included Tools. I believe we did one last week that Darren took care of. That was a PDM Standard webinar as well. So I'm Jared Spaniel, and I'm an applications engineer here at Decide Solutions, based out of the Fresno, California location. So some of my goals today for the Visualize Standard webinar are pretty straightforward, right? Basically, I want to introduce you to SOLIDWORKS Visualize, the standard version. And then I kind of just want to provide a basic understanding and overview of the capabilities of what Visualize Standard offers. Probably one of the most common questions I get between all the different packages that we offer, that SOLIDWORKS offers, is, what are the capabilities of this? What are the capabilities of that? What don't I have in this package, or what do I have in this one, right? So I definitely want to show Visualize Standard because this is an included thing that comes with SOLIDWORKS. And I'm going to clarify that in just a minute. So the questions I want to answer today are the four main questions that we usually reference, right? The who, the what, the how, and the why. More specifically, who has it? Who has Visualize Standard? What is it, right? Exactly what is it? What does it do? What are its capabilities? How does it work? When you open up Visualize and install all this stuff, what are you going to do to start off? How are you going to actually start a project? How are you going to actually work within the software? And then why should you use it, right? The big question, why should I use this product? Hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a pretty good understanding and a good answer to that question with a few examples that I'm going to show. So who has it, right? The first question that we talked about. Well, the good news is most likely you do. If you have a license of SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium on an active subscription service, then you have access to SOLIDWORKS Visualize. I'd consider that to be a pretty big benefit to being on our subscription services. So another kind of hidden question that I get relatively frequently is, how do I access Visualize, right? It's very easy. You can access it through the installation manager under the visualization tab, as you can see here from this screenshot from my 2018 installation manager. Basically, all you have to do is enter your serial number in the boxes, just like any other product, and it will install. Now, it is a standalone application that will install separately from SOLIDWORKS, right? And then the other follow-up question to this is, where do I find this serial number? Well, you can get your serial number through your customer portal as long as your SOLIDWORKS licensed product has been registered in your portal. Or you can contact Decide. We can pull it up for you and simply just give it to you, and then you can enter it in and go through the installation process, right? Pretty straightforward. So who is it for? Well, it's truly for anyone that needs to take some realistic photos of their product without actually having to get out a physical camera pointed at a physical product to get great images. Keep in mind that I'm only looking at Visualize Standard in this webinar installment, and we'll be covering some of the other features and benefits of Visualize Pro in a later webinar. With Visualize Pro Professional, you can get a deeper story by using things like animations, camera follows, exploded animations with part fade outs, and many of the advanced features that the professional version has that the standard version does not. So what is it? Well, it's a visualization software, if that wasn't already obvious. It's basically the camera for SOLIDWORKS. You can always get an image captured directly from SOLIDWORKS with multiple techniques and even capture some appearances and specific materials, but that's about where that capability ends. With Visualize, you can take this to another level of image creation with colors, shadows, appearances, scenes, custom backgrounds, lighting, and so many other effects that it can get pretty wild in a good way, of course. The purpose of this is to get that emotional response from these images. Let's take a look at a few examples of some images and see how you would feel looking at these on a website or possibly in a magazine. So the first example I have here is this drill. And the question I want to answer is, which one is better for a presentation and a decision-making process? So the one that you see here is kind of the real product, right? It's a model with some appearances and colors added. It looks okay, but nothing spectacular happening here. Kind of bland, kind of boring, just some general colors, right? Now take a look at this image on the right and see the drastic difference, right? That is a drastic improvement, complete with things like decals, materials, colors, lighting, and even a shadowed background. So which one would you want to buy or include in a customer product presentation? I think the answer is pretty obvious here, right? The second example is this kitchen product. The one on the left, basically just a boring white CAD model with a background, no real colors, no real appearances added. The one on the right, you can't even tell that it's not a real image, but a visualized rendering complete with a real-world background image that really brings this product to life, right? That's a pretty fantastic example right there of what Visualize can create. So the key difference between the packages is the ability to render still images in Visualize Standard, and basically think of it as moving images via animations, turntables, panoramas, etc. in the professional version. We're just talking about Standard today since that is what comes included with SOLIDWORKS. The Pro version is a separately purchased product that has a significant advantage over Standard, but of course is provided at an additional cost. So stay tuned to the channel, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the professional version in a later webinar. But today I just really wanted to hit on this Standard version so we can look at some still images and see what we can still get out of it just by utilizing the included Standard version. So let's take a look at a few examples that I've been working on to showcase how easy it is to use and what kind of outputs you can get. Being that the second installment of the new Star Wars, The Last Jedi, was just released, I chose to use this R2D2 example here to show a few things within Visualize. So first I'm going to jump over to SOLIDWORKS just so we can see exactly what we're looking at here. So of course I have this model in SOLIDWORKS of the R2D2, right? And what's really cool about Visualize, one of the new features that we have in 2018 is the ability to bring over the appearances directly from SOLIDWORKS to Visualize. And I'm going to show that in just a second here. But basically what I want to show here was just that the model looks pretty good in SOLIDWORKS, right? I have real view graphics on. I have some shadows. I have all my appearances. So you can see if I expand my appearances tab here under the appearances, I have all these different appearances that are attached to the different components here, right? So there's a lot of different appearances going on here. So obviously you don't want to have to recreate all this work, right? You can do it in SOLIDWORKS, make it look pretty cool, but then we can bring it into Visualize and really step this up and bring it to another level. So let's take a look at how we might do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just close out SOLIDWORKS to save some resources here. And then I'm going to look at Visualize Standard. Now I've already worked on this project, but I'm going to go ahead and bring in a brand new project. But first I wanted to talk about what you see when you open up Visualize. And what you can see here is I am actually on the standard version. So this is the full-on standard. So you can see exactly what you're going to get with the standard version, right? So when you open up Visualize, you get a couple tabs here. You get your recent projects that you've been working on. You get some sample projects that come within the software that are pretty cool to check out. And then you can even look at your recent SOLIDWORKS documents, right? You get the ability to start a new project, to open an existing project. And then over here on the right, we have a few things like a tip of the day. So this is really cool. You can scroll through different tips to kind of enhance your Visualize experience and get some cool information on more advanced techniques or little things that you might not know about. We have some tutorials here that you can play directly from the Visualize interface. And then down here we have some links that come within the homepage, basically some what's new stuff. You can share your renderings, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more at the end. This is really cool. There's a community forum, there's a help, that type of stuff, right? So let's go ahead and just start a brand new project here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit new project, right? Automatically creates a new project for me. We get a blank viewport. So what you see here is the Visualize interface, right? And there's kind of four main parts to this. There's the viewport, there's the palette over here on the right, there's the main toolbar up here on top. So these contain things like your rendering settings, the selection tool, the move tool, the zoom and rotate, different views, and then the output. So this is where you would basically finalize your output. Then down here on the bottom, we have some information about how many passes we're taking to render our image, right? If we're utilizing our CPU, our GPU, or a hybrid mode, our resolution settings, polygons, and a focal length. Then over here on the right, what we have is where our models are stored, an appearances tab, a scenes tab, a cameras tab, and a libraries tab. The libraries tab is very cool and important because this contains all of your information like your environments, your images, your appearances, different plates, textures, and you can toggle between what is local, stored on your computer, or what you can automatically download from the cloud. So say if I wanted to get a specific environment from the cloud, I could just select the cloud library, go to environment, and then what you can see here is the green check indicates that it's something I already have downloaded and have access to. Any of these ones, I can just hit download and it will automatically begin to download that. And then once it's downloaded onto my computer, the green check will appear letting me know that I now have that item locally. So I'm going to go ahead and import in that R2 model we just looked at, right? I'm going to click import. I'm going to select my SOLIDWORKS assembly, and you can select from a variety of different file types, like even step files, SOLIDWORKS parts assemblies, parasolids, Autodesk files, all kinds of different stuff can be imported, right? So I'm going to go ahead and import that R2D2 model, which is a SOLIDWORKS assembly. And then what you'll see here is we get some settings, right? So there's some import settings that are going to come up as soon as you hit import. And what we can import here is we can import all of these different things like geometry, appearances, cameras, scenes, and decals. So if you have some cameras that are pre-set up in SOLIDWORKS, in this case I don't, you could bring those in. I'm going to uncheck that. If you have some scenes set up in SOLIDWORKS, you can bring those in. I'm going to uncheck that. And even decals will carry directly over from SOLIDWORKS. So if you already have that stuff set up, go ahead and just reuse that information, right? But I don't have any of that in this case, so I'm going to uncheck those. But what I do have is, of course, geometry, and I have appearances. So if I leave this geometry box, right, one of the key things here is the part grouping. Now this is pretty important. There's a variety of different settings that you can set in here for how you want your part grouping to appear under your Models tab here. Now, if you want to retain the structure, basically that'll bring in the SOLIDWORKS model with all the bodies and show you how everything's laid out directly the same as it was in your SOLIDWORKS tree. You can have it do it automatically. In this case, what I'm going to do is, because I have a lot of different appearances, I'm going to group it by appearance. And what that does is it makes it a lot easier for me to apply appearances to specific components or parts that already have those appearances on it. So I'm going to hit Appearance. The Snap to Floor basically is how the model shows up in the viewport. If it hovers over the floor or if it snaps to the floor to look like it's actually on the floor more or less. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that on. All right. Now under the Appearances tab, I'm just going to leave this set to Auto Search and Manual Search. There shouldn't be anything missing in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now that appears pretty quickly, and I've got my model set up here, right? So let's jump over here and take a back look at this Models tab. So if we expand our Models tab and the root of our model, what you can see here is a list of all the appearances that I have on this component, or on this assembly, right? I should also note that I'm rendering in fast mode. So there's a preview mode, a fast mode, and an accurate mode, and I'm rendering based on speed. You can toggle this between speed and quality. You can also control a bunch of different settings under the Options tab that basically show you how many passes that you want to take. So I'm in fast mode right now. I can, the default set to 100, but you can bump this up to whatever you want. It's probably okay just to leave it at about 100 here. The resolution is another important setting. You can change the setting of your window. If you want to run at a lower resolution, it'll increase your performance slightly, but it won't look quite as good. And then you can select the rendering device if you want to use your CPU, your GPU, or hybrid, or you can just leave it set to automatic. I should also note that a good amount of render passes, you can see what 100 is actually doing here, and it shows you 100 down here under the passes. It looks pretty good. Usually when I do a final output, I go about between 500 and 1,000. I bumped it up to 1,500 a few times, and it's a bit hard to tell the difference between like 1,000 and 1,500 unless you've got some really detailed stuff going on. Anything above 1,000 looks pretty amazing. So even 500. And of course, the more passes that you take, the longer it's going to take to render, right? So now that we have this model in here, there's quite a few different things we can do. We can zoom in, and you can see as I move the model, it continues to restart the passes. So every time I shift the model, the passes restart over and it begins to render, and then it tops out at the default setting of 100, right? So under the Appearances tab, these are all of the appearances that came in from SOLIDWORKS, right? And if I click on one of these, there's a Selection tab up here, and you can select you can select different things. You can select a part, assembly, a group, or an appearance. So right now it's set to appearance. So if I select this appearance, I get a bunch of settings for that specific appearance, right? Similarly, if I select a part, once I highlight that part, it will highlight it and show me, okay, you've selected this red LED, right? Now you can see that this automatically set default back to appearance, and I selected the light, and the red LED appearance shows up. So each one of these appearances can be controlled individually, and we can specify a different type. So in this case, I had a light. I wanted to use an emissive type, but there's multiple other things in here like metals, paints, metallic paints. You can use plastics, gems, glass, all kinds of stuff. And then we can specify a specific color for each individual appearance, a brightness. We can even add textures to those specific appearances. So there's a lot of different things you can do in here. So this is one of the ones that I had created directly from Visualize. I think that looks pretty good. I changed few things like the different environments and the backgrounds is kind of what I was playing with here, and getting some different results, right? So I controlled some shadowing. I added some appearances for like the glass, did some part splitting, and I added some molded plastic around here. I added some brightness and emissivity to these lights to kind of bring those out and really make them pop. And then I added some different environments, and I played with the metallic shadowing on the top part here. This is one of the ones that I really liked that was kind of a final output. So kind of the before of the R2, right, was just this basic image from SOLIDWORks. You know, it could have been better with some shadows and shading, but then what we did was we brought it into Visualize, and the after here, right? There's a few features that I would have really liked to use that were only in the professional version. So I specifically wanted to use some directional lights and the bloom option for the lighting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and improve upon this with the Pro version and see what improvements can basically be made to make it look even better, right? But I think that looks pretty good for just the standard Visualize version, and this didn't take me that long. So let's take a look at a second example that I really liked that was relatively simple, but came out pretty good for a quick rendering, right? The appearances showed really well, and I even incorporated a decal using the decal option from Visualize. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the existing project that I created for this Hydro Flask bottle. And this was a very simple model in SOLIDWORks, but if we look at the before from SOLIDWORks, very bland, no decal, no real appearances, no real textures, just a simple white, bottle, pretty plain. So if we look at the Visualize model here, when I brought this in, I used similar settings to what I had showed before, and this was a simple part. It only had a handful of appearances. I tweaked a few of these. I wanted to use a more molded appearance for the cap, and I changed the appearance type to plastic, so I added that. I played with some of the transparency and the different colors, the highlight colors, to really make it pop. You can even play with some of the roughness attributes here to make it seem more like plasticky. And what I did was cool with this one was I added this decal here. And all I did to get this was I just, Google image searched the decal, saved out a file, which I believe was if I look at the decal, a JPEG file here. I think I saved it as a PNG. A PNG works really good for the decals. So when I initially saved it as a JPEG and then I brought it in as a PNG file. And then all we have to do to make that decal is just say new decal here. And you can make your own custom folders of these decals. And then what I did was I just dragged and dropped this on here. There's some sizing options, so you can even make it larger or smaller. You can reposition it by moving it around, right? And then to make it really pop, what I did was I directly added an appearance. You can see the appearance added over the decal here. So what I did was I customized a white appearance. This is kind of a cool trick to make the decals look more shiny and make them kind of pop more. Is I took just a white paint, shifted the appearance to white and the value all the way to 100. And then I just basically dragged it onto the decal itself here, and it added it to my decal. And then I just put the decal on the component. And then I brought in some different, I played with the scenes and the shadowing a little bit to make it look a little bit brighter and have some shadow reflection on it, right? So a pretty simple rendering here, and what I ended up getting from that was this output. So that was my after rendering. You can see quite a bit of a difference between the initial SOLIDWORks image and the after rendering, right? So this one turned out pretty good. It was relatively simple. And this image here, the other question I wanted to address was how long does this take and how many passes? This one I tweaked and I applied some more appearances to bring it to life and play with it, but I think this only took about 6 to 7 minutes, and I put it at around 500 passes and it looked great. So more than enough passes in this case to create a quality image. You could always bring it up to 1,000 and it won't increase your rendering time that much at all. So here's some other fantastic examples of content created in Visualize from real professionals that show some of the options that you can do and make really great content stand out, right? Now, assume that most of these were created in Visualize Professional. So the difference between standard and professional, you can kind of see what I created and what's been created here. There's a lot more options in professional and a lot more things you can do even just with still images to make them really stand out more. So just be aware of those differences, right? I just want to make that clear. You can still create great stuff just like I did, but there is a lot more features and options with lighting and different things you can do in the Pro version, even if you're just working with still images. It doesn't have to be with animations and turntables and all those other, more fancier options. So there's so many reasons to take advantage of this software. The first one being likely you already have it, so why not, right? But why should you use it? Well, you can design in a truly photographic environment. It makes a great first impression when presenting your design ideas or content ideas. A shift in consumer demand for more interactive content to aid in purchasing decisions. And these things are great for websites, any other marketing content that you need to create, even just for a PowerPoint, right? The other really big thing here is you can create marketing content or showcasing content in parallel with design development. So you don't have to have a final product to take a picture, a physical picture or image of your product, right? And this all amounts to being able to delivering these better products to market faster. So in summary, a picture is worth 1,000 words here, right? Visualize really allows us to tell that deeper story, captivate your audience, and we can see a pretty big time savings of about 40% to go from concept to dynamic and powerful photorealistic pictures. So I just wanted to highlight a teaser for some of the professional version features. You can clearly see the extra value in some of these after seeing just the standard version. We'll talk about a few of those next time, so I hope you can join us. But a lot of these things that I would have liked to have used with some of these examples were things like mainly the photometric lights and the configurations for different colors. So with that, I want to thank you guys for attending. Hopefully I've prompted you to take a look at Visualize and start experimenting with the images that you can create. There's a really cool thread on the SOLIDWORKS forum where users are showcasing their content and what people are creating. That's really worth taking a look at. The link is shown on the slide here, or you can directly access it from the Visualize interface on the home screen under Share Your Renderings, and that will take you directly to that forum thread. So I hope to see what you guys can create, and there's a lot of really cool stuff on there to check out and see what some of the capabilities are.